All right, everyone. Welcome back for another day. We're on day 2 of the 3-day painting in layers part of the challenge. So excited to be here again. We have yet again the lovely Erica Arcudi over here in the corner and our beautiful model, Jemiah, which we now have a reference image. We need to get it up on our website for you. We'll make sure that that's being done ASAP. It is not quite up yet, but we'll have a link in the show notes, and we'll also maybe text a link into the chat so that you'll have it available to you. And then we have the lovely Livia behind the switcher today, and that is whose wonderful voice you'll be hearing.
Hello, hello.
Yay! So anyway, really excited. Please, as always, talk to us. Let's have a fun conversation. Let's have a good time just hanging out, talking about life, talking about painting. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us. We're here to participate with you in this challenge. So, without further ado, we're gonna get started. I need to set up the camera palette still, but I didn't want to do that while we were so close to time. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that going while Erica mixes her colors. So we should have everything else ready to go, and aside from that. All right. Perfect. First, I gotta make sure that I got airplane mode off here. Or on, rather. Come just right next to you.
No worries.
In the comments, we have Joyce saying, "Good morning, Lewis et al. From Washington."
Awesome. Good morning back.
Good morning, Joyce. We have Alyssa saying, "Morning all from Oz," our Aussie-land friend.
Oh, that's awesome. Good to hear again that Alyssa is with us. She's been through it, the whole thing with us.
That's so cool.
We have Moonsoon saying, "Hi, everyone." And Sean Kelly saying, "Howdy, howdy, all
What's
from
up?
Utah." Julie from France. And then, I don't know how you would say that. Aya from Jordan.
Hello, everyone.
All right. All right, everybody. And I'm going to start also the timer. So.
Oh, sorry about
It's
that.
okay. No. I got it.
Are you going to keep track of it?
I'll keep track of it for this one, and we'll get you set up for the next one.
Okay.
That sound good? Cool. All right. Okay, so I need to put a little bit more paint out on my palette while we get set up.
All right. Do you have a strategy for today, Lewis?
My
Or
strategy
plan, or-
is to have fun.
Always.
No. Let's see. As I like to call it, strategery. My strategy is to get some paint onto the canvas.
You're like, first things first.
Yeah, and then on the palette. Palette first. My strategy is definitely to make all the right decisions.
Of course.
So if anyone knows the magic paint color or the magic brush or the magic right decision, let me know. I'm willing to hear any and everyone's best decisions that they would do. So, but I mean, with this great of a model, how could things go wrong, right? That's why I keep telling myself,
It's
Hopefully.
impossible.
absolutely impossible.
We have Judith saying hi from Virginia.
Hey, Judith.
Also have Esteban saying, "Good night, guys," from north of Sweden. Guys, I just want to say, since I joined your Atelier courses and these daily live challenges, I have improved so much. I'm
Oh,
going to
wow.
miss you.
Well, we'll be around, so just stay tuned for the next thing, and we'll be doing a lot more live stuff on our actual platform, And we have some lecture series we're going to be doing on the platform, and I'll be doing a few more free things on YouTube. So stay tuned. We have lots going on.
Yeah, we're never too far.
That's right. So, and you can always like comment or talk to us on Discord with the community. So my goal is to continue to like make challenges for the Discord community in the future. This is a way for me to like kind of kickstart having a community to do the challenges with. So it's part of the ultimate goal. All right. Let's see.
Edward says hello, hello from Canada. And Moonsoon is saying greetings from the sunny Mediterranean coast.
Oh, wow. Man, I will say the Mediterranean coast is pretty gorgeous. You got a great place to paint every day if you ever wanted to. I would be interested to know what different people's emphasis would be if they were to paint. You know, like sometimes I wonder if like some people's priority is to make beautiful color that may not even be like exactly what they see up there, but makes like a gorgeous color harmony that relates to the subject matter. You know, I was looking at a figure piece that Susan Lyon just posted a few days ago, and I was just like admiring some of the color relationships, and it's probably not nearly what was being seen, but the relationships were so gorgeous. You know, you could tell that that's what she values, is those color relationships. Then other people it's realism. Some people it's a combination of multiple things like that. That I probably was one I fall into the category of mostly, is that I like it to be accurate, but at the same time I also love for there to be a lovely color relationship that creates a tonal harmony between my colors.
I think I would fall into that category as well,
Yeah?
where I want it to be representative of what I'm seeing in front of me, yet with some maybe leeway with colors of what I'm selecting from what I'm seeing.
Yep, totally.
Because one thing that's really interesting, we're working from artificial light, but when you work from natural light, as an example, like it's changing all the time.
Yep.
And so if you try to chase those colors, you'll never really get it, because it just depends. If it's a cloudy day, then it might look warmer. If it's a sunny day, then with blue sky, then you have blue filtering through in your natural light, even if it's north face. And so just depends. And so I think understanding relationships, regardless of some of those tints, is kind of what I'm going for.
I like that. All right, I'm just gonna touch. See, yeah, we're pretty much dry, which is great. Means we can work into it. It's funny because I think my darks are just the only ones that are just ever so slightly tacky, and I think it's because of the black. My ivory black dries very slowly.
Yeah.
So
That would make sense.
Joyce comments to answer the question, mine is expression.
ooh, expression so important. I'm planning on doing a lecture on expression. It was a workshop that I did at Portrait Society, and I have a whole PowerPoint on talking about finding poetry and expression. So hopefully that will be up not too long from now. Presentation is ready to go. I just need to fit it in. So expression's an excellent thing, you know, finding the spirit of the person in expression is really beautiful. You can create gorgeous narratives, art for art's sake, you know, all the things can live there. Emotional quality to a painting can be so important. And it's when you can balance all of those things that I just feel like that's where I start declaring you as not necessarily that you're that's the only way to be a master, but I will say that to balance all of those things, it's like trying to balance a stick on top of a stick on top of a stick. And so you have to really know what you're doing for every variable factor that you add in to be a part of the poetry and range of your painting. It pushes the difficulty higher and higher.
Is there anything you're doing for day 2 to prepare or warm up for going into the painting, or are you just gonna go right in and put paint on?
Well, the first place I'm going to start is to key my value range again, because now that I have some dark on and I was painting on such a light panel, my dark's gonna go even darker, and I'm gonna key some of the hair so that I can get a better assessment of how light my face is. It's funny, Liv, we were talking about this earlier, that the dark relationship of something can make something either feel more light or more dark in context. So in this instance, I feel like her skin tone is in the range that I'm wanting, and I just need to key her hair a bit darker, and then that way it gives me a more accurate decision of how broad the form relationship of light to dark on her face is going to be.
First things I'm doing today, first I want to just, now that I have some fresh eyes, I just want to make sure that the geometry of her skull is making sense. And I don't love the shape that I created, so I'm trying to just adjust it without going too detailed. I just need to tweak it a little bit. And then I'm going to look over to see if there are any drawing corrections, like proportions and structure, things like that, making sure those elements are working, kind of easing into the painting, working general to specific, big shapes to small. So if there are any big errors that I've made, I would like to correct them now.
Thank you. Alyssa is wondering if Erica and Lewis could talk about their goals for today. And is Erica gonna have a camera on the palette at some point?
Yes, it's coming.
It's coming. I have to go grab another camera, and so we'll do it on the next break.
Beautiful.
But yes, it will be there.
All right.
Hopefully, as long as technology allows.
So what are your goals for today with your painting?
My goal today is to refine the portrait and get a general lay-in of the hand and her jacket. So I don't want just the portrait to be isolated on its own. I want some context, but I have a limited amount of time, and I also I want to prioritize the portrait, and then the things like the jacket are going to change. Her hand might shift, things like that that are more movable. I don't want to fix those in too early, but I do want to get a sense of their color and value relationship. So I'll make notes for those today, but I might not refine them today. So all about strategy.
Definitely. Especially for like a 3-day project, you definitely kind of have to go into it with a plan.
For sure. And there are things I'm going to prioritize while the model's up, such as making sure I have the drawing set, but then there are other things like, the background that I can do when she's on break. So there's a lot of strategy when it comes to that. Trying to maximize the quality of my observation for when she's up, and then the things that I don't necessarily need her up for. Like I might take notes while, for example, to get like the value relationships and color relationships, but I might not fill in a shape when she's up.
Mhm. What about for you, Lewis?
Well, I would say that we have similar goals. I would love to solidify the portrait a little more. I'm going to put a little bit of underpainting on the outfit so that later tomorrow I'll be able to drag a bit of a lighter color on top of it and kind of create a textural relationship to what we see. So I'll be doing that. And yeah, it's not too far from what she's saying in the sense that I'm checking drawing things as well. I'll do more drawing checking stuff on the next pose. This one I'm just gonna gain a little bit of color context first and then go from there about how deep and I want the value range to go. So today's establishing more about what the value range is going to look like. Then, and then tomorrow will be more about details and glazing and even adding chunky bits and maybe I might add a little impasto today so that I might be able to glaze over some tomorrow.
That's the advantage of working in layers and having time, is that you can create effects that take time.
Mm-hmm.
You can have things dry and then go over them, and you can build up texture and things that when you have time you can take advantage of it.
Yep, totally.
I'm excited that we're ending the 20-day challenge with a 3-day painting.
Isn't it great? I'm glad we are doing it this way too. In a way, it feels like a reward.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've done all of these single day paintings, so you get a chance to really try some stuff out.
I think similar to you, Lewis, I like the value range I've created today or created yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So any adjustments I make, I want to make sure I don't go too bright. I think one thing that's really beautiful about our setup is how there's so many rich colors. So I don't want to bleach them out by keying my painting too bright.
Yep.
So to be conscious of that as I move forward. So I'll take some notes here, just putting little color notes on highlights and things like that. That way I know where I'm going and that I don't go too bright.
Yeah, it's funny because yesterday it was something that I did a lot, which is when you focus up on the hair and it's easy to see how bright the highlights can get sometimes. And I used to make that mistake all the time where you'll put the highlight in and the hair starts to look gray. And I was so glad that, in a way, that was occurring, because then you can show how to the audience how to not only adjust it, but that compressing the highlights down, the highlights in the hair usually are really closely related to the same value as the lower lights in the hair, because the value is just far more compressed than we sometimes think about it, because our eye is just so acutely good at differentiating contrasts.
Especially in the dark, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, especially in the dark because of our rods, right?
I think it's helpful. That's where, squinting, of course, is helpful, but staring at the focal area and then using your periphery vision to observe that kind of value compression. For example, I'm going to look at her eyes and then pay attention to my periphery vision to see the contrast in the hair. And it's so much, the grouping is so much closer together, the values are so much closer together in the hair. But then if I stare at the hair, I could see so many different things going on. And so I want to make sure that the hair is compressed in relationship to the focal area, which I want her eyes to be higher contrast in what you look at first.
I had not considered that technique of like using your peripheral vision like that.
It can be very, very useful.
Yeah, some people almost kind of call it like the big look, like a way to assess everything as a whole so that you can understand what is hierarchically important. And that was something that was definitely not taught in my training, but something that I have added as a tool into my training that has made a big difference. Because my training, they talked about things like the highlight thing and that in the hair and that kind of stuff, but they didn't talk enough about assessing the whole in order to achieve enough investigative understanding to be able to fix it.
That was part of my sight size training, was really being aware of what you're seeing from different points of view. And for example, you're going to stand like really far back and paying attention to the big impression, optical, from an optical point of view. And it's like, if you don't see it, don't draw it, kind of thing. Like, and for a beginning stage. And also just like the things that you notice from far away versus the things you notice when you're really up close to the model. And so it's almost, there's a similar relationship too when you're looking at your painting from far away versus when you're looking at it up close. And I think there's something really interesting about that, where when you're looking at something far away, it has a certain impression, and you go up close and you start to notice more and more things. I think that's interesting to have a relationship between that. It's something that we talked about a lot when I was a student in Florence.
On that note, everyone, that is our first break. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will be back shortly. I'm going to get a camera on Erica and do a few homework maintenance things. So we'll be back in just a second.
All right, we are back.
All right, everyone, we're back. For another exhilarating 20 minutes.
Exactly. We have a few more people saying hello. We have Jean from Florida. We have Sue Braswell from, oh,
Hi,
no, I shouldn't
Sue.
say. Sue says good afternoon. Beautiful work. We have Cryptic Art from Florida as well. And someone from Nebraska.
Oh, awesome.
Then Moonsoon comments, the model is so beautiful. Would love to paint her too.
Well, we will have those images up. I had to adjust a few things and we had to get a camera up, so I'll make sure to talk to the powers that be to get those images up after this session.
We have someone saying hi from Tennessee.
Hello,
And
hello.
Joyce asks, Lewis, as you add the darkest darks, are you using a mixture with black?
I am in this instance because her hair, in the darkest shadow part of her hair is black. So I want to make sure that I'm mixing black though. I'm not putting dead black on there. I never put the darkest dark
It's
of
just
my
like pure
color.
black. Yeah.
Right. At the beginning. I might at the end, but when I'm in these stages, I typically will make sure that I feel like I have everything kind of in the right spot before I make too much of a judgment call. So the same thing with the inside. I'm just starting with the darkest areas, the shadow areas, and just making an assessment, kind of making a few painting tweaks to mark things and then like double check them on a measurement just to make sure that everything seems to be working in the right spot. So, but it's amazing how, like, when you put in those darkest notes, how light the color that you had down becomes, you know.
Do you worry at all about the bits that are sunken in, or do you just plan to go over it again? So
I plan to go over it again. In fact, I should probably just put the lightest amount of couching on it, which is where you put just like a hint of color down. But you know, so I probably, while you say that, I might as well go ahead and do something to that effect. And just put a little level of paint color down. It's a great way to kind of stage your painting. So it's before I put all these darks in, that might be a good thing to do.
And for me, because I have some areas that are sunken in, but I'm probably just going to paint over it. I didn't go completely dark yesterday, so if I just put pure paint, it'll be dark enough for me and with how I've done it. So I find it easier to control the paint at this stage without putting in oil, but it's something that I'll probably do that tomorrow. is putting perhaps a little bit of oil tomorrow.
So if y'all aren't familiar, couching is, I mean, I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly as a French term, but it is a French term. And it's basically you add a little bit of pigment into the paint and go over the whole entirety of the area you're going to work in. It's actually the better way of oiling out in a way, because what you're doing is if you just oiled out, it would tend to yellow heavily. And this will allow it to actually have a touch of pigment into it that does two things. It evens your painting out a little bit, while at the same time making everything have almost as if you're painting wet into wet. It sort of stages your day to have a wet into wet painting situation. So you don't need a lot of pigment. I'm using a transparent red oxide as the pigment, and I'm adding just a hint of yellow and white into it, and just going over the top like this. It's a really good way of creating a cohesive nature to what you've already put down.
And a good way of making sure you're not overdoing the oil that you are putting down.
Yep, that's a good point too.
And you have a medium mixed in with the paint?
It's oleogel, but it's doing the same thing that oil would do. So it's a alkyd-based gel that is made by Rublev, but it's actually the more common practice is to use linseed oil. So I just didn't have any linseed oil at hand, and it was the closest thing I had, so I went with that because I've couched many times with oleogel.
Thank you. Jean is wondering, for this challenge I am painting on Strathmore canvas paper, but I can't seem to move the paint on it as I can on canvas. Any tips?
Make sure you have it mounted to a solid something in order to move the paint around a little bit better. I know several people that use that paper, that oil paper, and love it. So also use more paint. I often find that the reason people are struggling with something is because they're just not using enough paint to counteract the weave of the canvas or something else about it,
Nice.
All right, so now it's all couched up. I'll add a chair and a lamp later. Oh, okay. Bad
I liked
joke.
it.
I'm just trying to keep it lively here. I'll be here all night, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, nice.
Because you live here.
Oh, more jokes. I love it.
For me, I'm basically repainting my shadows, but I don't think of it as a problem to repaint what I did yesterday, because I'm basically painting it again, but now with more specificity, now that I have like the rest of the painting to gauge what my drawing needs to be. So basically going more accurate, more specific, thinking of how can I push the color a little bit, and correcting the drawing, a few things at once, but that's where I'm at this stage. So I would like to even though I have another day tomorrow where I'll work likely on details, I would like to make sure that at the end of today, I'm at a pretty good place where it looks cohesive and I'm not having to do any major drawing fixes. So I'm going to try to do the best I can to have everything look okay for the portrait. And then tomorrow, maybe push or pull something that needs to happen. That's the goal.
That sounds like a solid goal.
I'm going to try my best.
I'm excited to watch it unfold.
Thank you. Lewis and I were talking before the camera started rolling. I was saying I really want this to turn out really well. Like I am motivated for it to look good, and I'm inspired by the pose and everything like that. But sometimes that drive can almost hold you back a little bit, where maybe you become too precious with your mark making, or too hesitant, or afraid to try different things, or just all around too reserved. And so trying to let that go as I'm painting and just enjoy. Try not to think about the result too much.
Enjoy the process. Yeah. It's a challenge.
It is a challenge. It is easy to let that pressure or those expectations kind of prevent you from just getting into the flow of things.
Sometimes in order to have a good result, you have to let go of the result. And so,
Yeah.
True that. Monique says hi from Massachusetts.
Hi, Monique.
And Edward was wondering if you knew what is worse in terms of toxicity, lead, cadmium, or mercury paints.
Probably mercury would be my guess. You know, it's so bad on the nervous system, but...
and it soaks through your skin, right? I'm pretty sure it...
I don't know that I would have to look that up to make sure on that one. I'm not sure on that one, but maybe you know more on... I've heard something that I haven't on that matter. I know that lead and cadmium don't, but I'm not very sure if mercury can or not. So I was under the impression that none of the heavy metals can, but I could very well be wrong.
Do you know if there's a difference in the level of toxicity between lead and cadmium?
No, I know that, you know, I mean, you can find cadmium in cigarettes. So, like, I mean, and I know that for a fact that your body can get rid of cadmium over time, slowly. And I don't think that it has as severe neurological problems as mercury and lead can. So, you know, if you're a messy painter, just wear gloves.
Yeah.
You know, and I honestly, I tell people that you have, speaking of, I'm going to put my lid on my solvent, but solvents probably have more problems for you than the heavy metals do, because that can soak through your skin, and you can inhale it because it's just in the air, hanging out. So
I like to remind people that odorless does not mean non-toxic.
yes,
It just means you can't sense it if it's in the air. So be careful with things like Gamsol. You know, even though I know they have a slower evaporating rate than turpentine and everything, but that doesn't mean that you just have it open and just breathe in it all
Yeah,
day and
right.
you'll be fine. Like, it's just,
not a good
don't do
plan.
it.
Yeah, not a good plan. What I would say there is, you know, what I try to do is during my painting process, especially if I'm not painting alla prima. If I'm painting alla prima, I'll usually have some some solvent out, and I'll try to keep the lid on it. But for the most part, during my normal painting by layers process, I don't ever have solvents out. I only use them to sort of clean the brushes afterwards, and even then I'm using more oils to clean the brushes and just the solvents as like one of my steps in the process. So I wouldn't call myself solvent free, but I would say I'm much closer to solvent free than most. But I would be worried more about the solvents than the heavy metals, for sure.
Remember Dan saying at school that of all the things on your palette, the turpentine is the worst. And we had lead on our palettes. So I think it's important to know a bit of the chemistry so you know why it's dangerous. It's not just, oh, it's dangerous. You need to know what's going on.
Right.
So, for example, for turpentine, you don't want to breathe it in. You don't want it to be by a flame, things like that.
Yeah.
And then with lead, you don't want to ingest it or get it in, like if you have a cut in your hand, you don't want to have lead going through that way either. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
really understanding your materials is really important. I always give this lecture to my students, even though it's like, I don't want to scare anybody or do it in a way that prevents them from painting, but it's just you need to respect the chemistry of what's going on.
I'm an extremely clean painter, and I wash my hands thoroughly every day, even though I almost never get paint on me. It's not about that. It's more about the residues that I'm like wiping off on my paper towel, and then it's getting on the stem of my brush a little bit, and it's those residues that you can't see that actually sometimes have a stronger propensity to be bad for you than the other. We're having a siren going off, and I feel like I'm in New York again. That was something that you learned to drown out when you lived there, over time. It's all the sirens. I mean, all day long, every day. Oh, I meant to do.
James is letting us know mercury can evaporate but is not absorbed through the skin. You should not ingest mercury. This is research from when he broke a thermometer.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like when you gild with it, the chemistry in gilding it, it actually evaporates mercury, and that's where like the Mad Hatter's whole scenario would come out. Where you say Mad as a hatter because he would use mercury. Well, they wouldn't gild; they would use it to with the beaver fur on top hats, and. So thank you for checking in on that. That's great.
Thank you. Someone is wondering, what solvents do you use? Or what do you mix your paint with?
So I would say the main thing I mix my paint with is lean medium, which is lavender oil mixed with linseed oil. But you can buy lavender oil just by itself or with I think a citrus something where they use as a cleaning solution. If you're interested in trying to be solvent free. But lavender oil in excess, the jury's still out, but a lot of people say, you probably need to be cautious about that also being out.
Same with the citrus one. Yeah,
Same with the citrus one, yeah. Okay, so So just keep in mind that just because it's a natural occurring thing, well, so is, you know, poison ivy, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be eating that in my salad, you know. So, but that's a break for the next 20 minutes. So we will see everybody, and if we have any more thoughts on that, I'll let you know as soon as we get back on break, off a break.
Perfect.
All right, see you in a second.
All right, everybody, we are back from break.
Can lift your chin gently higher.
Wherever you want, because that's good for me.
And maybe just a hair straighter. Yep.
Cool.
Does that work for you?
Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's great.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Daylin is commenting, hi all, did not get the chance to tune in yesterday. What kind of pigments did you use in your beginning layers? And maybe do you consider drying time and leanness when you are picking them?
Mainly transparent oxide. Yes, we do. And transparent oxide red, transparent oxide yellow, and Naples yellow, lead white, and black were the main colors. And then I also have French ultramarine on there. But those colors, most of those colors dry fast except for the black and maybe the ultramarine blue. But everything else dries pretty quickly and allows for it to almost be fully dry by the time it's time to paint on that next layer.
I used similar colors. I had my full palette out, but I probably used primarily ultramarine, transparent red oxide, English red, which is an earth pigment. I probably used Naples yellow, genuine Naples yellow dark here. I think that's probably what I mainly used. Maybe like a touch here and there of other things, and then lead white. And my painting was completely dry, so I could paint on top of it. I do like to make sure that for example, I wouldn't use like alizarin crimson for a block-in, you know, because it takes longer to dry and it kind of bleeds everywhere. So there's certain things like that I would avoid for blocking in. Otherwise, these are pretty good. And I like to just use pure paint and just paint thinly. I find that when I do that for my earlier stages, I don't really have an issue with things not being dry or dry enough the next day.
We have a couple comments to add to the conversation before break that we were having. Edward says I add drops of lavender oil or spike oil in my Gamsol, so when I have it open, I know it's open.
Nice. That's smart.
And then Daylene says I recommend D-lead wipes and hand soap. They are great to work with.
And I think Natural Pigment sells those, I believe.
Lead wipes?
The D-wipe, those wipes.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I need to get me some.
I really want to paint this hand, but I'm going to just leave it as a block-in for right now.
Sometimes it's so hard to refrain those kind of things, at least for me. I'm hoping that everyone's like painting along with us. Be great to hear what you're working on.
When you're choosing your colors and values, how much of your decision making is based on trying to be as accurate to life as possible, and how much is based on aesthetic?
Ooh.
I like to think they actually go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
I like to, or we mentioned a little bit earlier, to make something that's related to what I'm seeing. So I like it to be pretty naturalistic, but it's more about selecting what I'm seeing and choosing to show the certain relationships of what's happening in front of me. So I'm observing nature, and I'm choosing beautiful things from it, and creating relationships based off of, in color harmonies, based off of what I see in front of me. So it's a bit of like a combination of the two.
A good answer. I would say I'm pretty close, so I don't have too much to add.
And if there's something aesthetically that I think would like work better, I would more likely just change the setup to have a different color harmony if I want to do that. You know what I mean? Like I would adjust the background, or just like put a different colored cloth in front of it or something like that, just to create the look that I'm going for.
I will say that there's some times where I want to change things on the fly, and I'll go for it on the fly, and that sometimes works out. As I've done it many times, it works out more often than not. But it still has its days where, I'll try something, and a big thing would be like I want to maybe shift the color harmony from what I see to be something else that might be a little more appealing. Maybe I didn't have the right backdrop color or something. In those instances, I do try to shift things to what might be in harmony.
I think as you have more experience, you can adjust and make up more and have it feel naturalistic. I find that I need to, I can tint maybe one way or the other, but I can't like rekey something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can make minor adjustments, but if it's something, for example, like I have a background and it's one shade of gray and I'm trying to like shift it slightly differently, I can do that. But if it's like, I'm going to make the background a completely different color, like I'll just better to just have a different color background.
Yeah.
For me.
And I would say anyone who, it's better, you'll set yourself up for more success if you do it the way Erica's saying. If you don't have experience with changing things around, try your best to get it accurately as beautiful and harmonious in life as possible, that you feel inspired to paint, and then try to mimic that is a better practice for sure.
And of course, it's like, that doesn't mean you have to be super literal to what you see in front of you, but it's just giving you enough of a platform to go off of than completely making something up, especially if the rest of your painting is done from a careful observation and done realistically. You know what I mean? Because then you start to have two different worlds happening. You have the imagination created world, and then you have the like tight, deeply observed from nature world, and to make sure that they communicate.
Benjamin Lester has a question. I'm doing a series of small self-portraits and noticed myself idealizing my features. Do y'all still have issues with objective observation, and what strategies are you using to reproduce accurately?
For me, the mirror is the best. And I've done self-portraits where I'll look at my painting in the mirror, meaning I'll use my mirror to look at my self-portrait in the mirror. Anyway, it's a whole thing. But it's useful to have that flipped image for a fresh eye. And then sometimes in self-portraits too, it might not be the most comfortable thing, but you can ask friends and family who know you to point out the things that look off because they see you all the time. But sometimes the flipped image can be a little bit weird for them to see. So, maybe flip the image so that they see what they're used to seeing. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yep. We look at ourselves in the mirror, in a mirror image all the time.
Yes.
So by flipping the image, we show them what they see.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I forget about that fact that when I look in the mirror, it is flipped.
That's why in my self-portrait, I did it through 2 mirrors, is because I wanted people to see the observed Lewis versus my observed Lewis. It's kind of like, the same with your voice, where you hear your voice on a mic,
I'm like,
and you're like, whoa, that sounds so different than what I'm used to hearing.
Make it stop.
Yeah. Since I didn't work a whole lot on the lips yesterday, I'm spending a decent amount of time getting them closer to what feels accurate as like a starting point, so that I give it more time that I didn't give it yesterday. Some of the times when I'm thinking about how I want to paint something, I often will have to tune things out, like as if I'm think about like a guitar, tuning it out of tune in order to tune it in tune. Usually that helps a lot to get closer to what feels right.
And how does that work for you? Does that mean you have to push something too far, or?
It does. Or I might have to overlap a color. I might have to overlap a shadow in an area to get the drawing closer, because maybe my brush is too big to perfectly get it. And even if I did get it perfectly nailed, it will have an odd line or something to it. So it's better to overlap paint colors.
I was actually just thinking about that when I was doing this cheek turning into the background. I overdid it into the background, knowing that I either want the soft edge, or I will carve back into it with the background, and then it'll be more accurate than if I just tried to accurately paint the line.
Yep, exactly. A lot of carving going on.
Yeah.
And
Do either of you have any tips for painting highlights on skin?
I have a couple of tips that might help people. So one of them is I will add a bit of the color of whatever it is I'm working on into that highlight. Switch over to a smaller flat So it will allow the highlight to feel more real because it, especially for skin, it picks up some of the local color and puts it into the highlight. So it's the same color with less chroma and higher in value is the way I think about it. And that helps a lot, I think.
So it's like more diffused a little bit.
Yeah, because you can overdo it. Now, if you're
That's
wanting
what
to
I like to do.
Overdo it.
overdo it, it's so easy to overdo. And so that's a way that helps me assess whether I've overdone it or not, honestly. You can, some people that, say they paint more colorfully, well, you can most certainly make it just a really cool highlight and harmonize with other parts of your painting. But depends on just how accurate you want it to be to life or how you want the color to sing in a way that that makes sense.
I think, again, it's always about relationships. So I think paying attention to the highlight shape, like looking at that shape and seeing exactly where it is important. But then remembering that it's a highlight on top of skin, in a whole lighting situation. So, always about the context and what's surrounding it. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I didn't key too brightly. So I put my highlights here just as notes, just to make sure I didn't have them screaming, and then it starts to kill the realism.
Yep.
Highlights are so good for communicating texture of the surface texture of the object. So think of a dusty vase versus a shiny waxed car, like the reflective surfaces and the texture is reflected through the highlight, a lot through the highlight. And so I want to make sure that I'm communicating what skin feels like. So I don't want to overdo highlights, even though I like all the color that I'm seeing around. I have to, like many things, keep it in context.
Mm-hmm.
This is when good self-control comes in handy.
Totally.
Right now I'm painting the nose and cheekbones and eye sockets, making sure that all of that's relating. And one thing that's helpful with painting the nose is remembering that light is wrapping around the entire face. So right now I need to put in the shadow shape for the nose and everything like that, which is fine. But I have to make sure that light is wrapping around the entire face, including around the bridge of the nose and over it. So I don't want to have too harsh of a distance between the light that's hitting the nose and the shadow on this side. So it's not such a deep plane change as the side of the cheek. So that's something that I always have to keep in mind. So figured I'd share it.
Yeah, it's good. Good stuff.
Oh, one more thing about highlights. Their placement depends on your position, where you are observing. So if you move, the highlight will move too. So it's important to keep that in mind when you're painting, to really keep really be aware of your position as
Yeah.
your point of observation. Sorry.
That's great. Good point.
All right, everyone, we're going on the next break. We will be back in 5 minutes. Thank you, Erica. All right, everybody, we are back.
A little bit. Perfect. Thank you.
We got Erica there. Sound. Maybe it's this. Oh, that helped. All right. So, Erica, what part of the painting are you working on now? What is your focus?
I am working on going from cheekbone to cheekbone, and then eye socket to eye socket, probably forehead, and then slowly working into the eyes. I want to make sure that all of my bone structure is set first before I get into the eyes themselves. So making sure that the eyes fit into the eye socket.
Smart move. Isn't it the worst when you don't get the placement right because you didn't figure out that stuff well enough?
Exactly. It's always a good idea to see the skeleton underneath and place that in.
Do you tend to do that for all the features, like the nose and the mouth as well?
For everything.
Yeah.
It's always good. If you are wanting to learn anatomy, a good place to start is with the skeleton.
Thankfully, we have a couple skeletons here.
We do.
Yeah, we've started again.
Oh, we already started?
We
Yeah,
just started.
Oh, cool. All right. Good.
Sue Braswell comments, "It's like you were all looking over my shoulder. I'm not doing the assignments, but I sure am hearing info I need to know while you all talk."
Bring your chin just a touch. Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome, Sue.
It's something I think is so cool about portrait and figure painting and drawing is that it doesn't matter what subject you're painting, all of the principles
Told you just a
apply.
little more vertical. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes. What she said. Don't y'all think that Erica has like such good teaching ability? She's so good at thoughtful, considerate comments about how to paint.
She is. I feel like I need to have a notebook with me when we're watching. I need to like scribble down the things that she says.
That was me as a student. I wrote down all my critiques. Seriously, I did that to make sure I understood what was being said. And if I couldn't rewrite it, then I definitely didn't understand it.
Yeah, and it's valuable for retaining information. A lot of the times you hear a thing that maybe you recognize in the moment is valuable, but if you don't have a way to really store it in your memory, it gets lost.
Yeah, you can turn just a little bit this way, rotate your head towards the wall. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anytime you need to do that, just go ahead.
Okay. Because our everything should be pretty closely synced to each other.
Yep.
Cool.
Ooh, that's too dark. What time do we have, Livia?
We are at 3:24.
Okay.
Halfway there.
Thank you.
Whoa, we're halfway there.
Is that our song for today?
Whoa, living on. Okay. I always have to be mindful that whenever I decide to do karaoke, that people are listening in.
Christopher is wondering, is Gamblin 1980 paint tubes good? And I think maybe that's student grade, so maybe generally, how do you feel about student grade paint?
Well, I'm in the what's the word I'm looking for? In the group that believes that student grade paint is great at the very, very, very beginning of your practice. Because the problem is with student grade in the future is that there's so many fillers and there's so many things added to it that the paint mixes differently. And so as soon as you feel like you've got a grasp on your paint, I would quickly move over to a more professional paint brand or paint, what's the kind of category? So having a hard time. See, this is why I like Erica to teach, because she actually makes like cohesive, understood sentences, whereas I'm just sitting here like,
I do try to step back from my painting though and talk rather than try to paint and talk because it just won't.
That's a much more smart approach.
Otherwise, the words do not come out. Like somebody wrote in the comments, it's like two different sides of your brain working.
Yeah, it really is.
So.
Oh man, it's so true.
But on the question of, I don't think, like oil paints don't necessarily go bad over years. It might separate, depending on the pigment, from the binder. But the paint itself, if you're using like a professional grade paint, I don't think it'll go bad over time. You might have to just like mix it together again.
Oh, were they asking if it goes bad?
No, I think somebody found a paint from a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
And that was part of the question.
Gotcha. Okay.
From that point of view.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, on a long duration of time, I think that some paint colors, the only thing that they might do is like separate. Mm-hmm. And I believe over like crazy amounts of time, they might do something. But
and also depending on the pigment, like cobalt,
of course, right?
Well, just naturally likes to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thanks, cobalt.
How dare you, cobalt?
Well, I just find it really interesting because that's why they add, what is it, aluminum stearate or something to it to help keep it stable. So that's an example of adding something to the, where it's not just pure pigment and linseed oil, where it's like a good thing to have the additive because it keeps the paint together.
Mm-hmm. All right, I swear I'm not going to spend the whole day on the lips, so.
I was just thinking, you're mentioning doing the mouth. I was like, I should really take a step forward on the mouth so I don't have to rush it tomorrow, since I know that's what I struggle with.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I wanted to like start with it today, but the pitfall of starting it as the first thing you do is also that you
want
to stay
do
in
it
there.
all. Yeah, for sure.
But if I want anything else to feel like it matches the lips,
Yeah,
the painting, I guess.
necessary.
Think about that. Also not very entertaining for the audience if I'm just sitting here just like over and over again, pushing and pulling the lips.
It's entertaining if they turn out to be the best lips.
It's going to be like the Rocky Horror Picture Show where you just see the lips singing. the beginning of the movie. I just happened to watch that last night, so like that's
Like in your
fresh in my
brain.
head. So like that's
Like in your
fresh in my
brain.
head. 'Tis the season. My brother's playing in that play recently, soon, and I was like, you know what? I better watch it before I go
I
watch
thought
the
he
play.
told you not to watch.
He did, and then he changed his mind. He said, actually, it'd probably be good if you watched it before you came. So I was like, okay.
You were just
So-
following his advice.
Yep. In fact, when he was over, we almost watched it a few nights ago when he was over. And I was like, you've seen it. I'm not gonna bore you with something you've already seen probably 100 times over to get ready for your role, you know. So.
Matt Conrad says, looks good, makes me want to paint again.
Good.
Yay.
You should go for it.
Go for it. And someone asks, what methods do you use to measure proportions? Thanks.
Boy, I would love to be able to just be like, it's just my eyes.
I'm just that good.
I'm just that good.
I just know.
I just know. I just look at it and see it.
Like, you remember being a kid and tracing things? Like, I did that with coloring books at my daycare. We wouldn't
Yeah.
color on the coloring books. We would trace the coloring book page and then we would color on that.
There you go.
But yeah, I just trace it.
So I use all sorts of tools in what I call my investigative quiver. But a lot of them are having to do with scale and proportion relationships. And then, of course, I do comparative measurement, which is taking a measurement of one thing and comparing it to another. And that works out really well, often. And then trying to think, I have a nice sleepy, dreamy eye looking on here. I think that the other thing that I do often is when I'm doing comparative measurements, I'll do a vertical with a horizontal. So if I'm like measuring the width of the lips, I'll measure it against a vertical measurement of like maybe, the nostril to the eyebrow or something. And the reason that helps so much is because if we only measure verticals with verticals, then we will end up with a painting that might be very elongated and narrow or very wide, and we would never know because everything worked out, computed. And that's just not, it helps you get more accurate quicker by comparing those two together, separately or together.
Proportion is height in relationship to width. You need both.
Yep. What she said. See, she said it in 3 words where it took me like 20 minutes to be like, I got to do
To
this.
think about what you said and then
Erica has a way with words. She's very articulate.
All the girls here are going to roll their eyes, but I actually listen to a podcast called A Way with Words. And it's all about like the lexiconology, I think. And cliches and where they come from and how we use words and all that kind of stuff is really a fun podcast. Bring your chit-chat. Yeah, just a little bit. That's good. Perfect.
We have in the comments, Matt's Toaster has given us a rhyme song that he wrote, and I will present it to you. Okay. Yo, yo, yo. Hey there, East Oak Studio. Hope the painting has been downright coolio. It's awesome watching you guys layer as well as Lewis's rendition of Living on a Prayer.
Wow. That means he hasn't like been thinking about it. He just like busted it out.
He actually says, that took me way too long to make that song.
He's a
That was
poet.
awesome.
It's a labor of love, and we appreciate it.
Super, super cool. And tilt your head just a little bit. Yep. And then turn it just a touch that way. Yep. I love how subtle you shift your head. You know, sometimes I'll be like, I paint a lot of kids and I'll be like, turn your head just a little bit that way. And they're like, yeah. So I love the subtlety that you use. You need to put some of these, Mass Toaster needs to put some of these rhymes and stuff on our Discord group. And some of the jokes. I'm pretty sure he was the one that's been making all the jokes, right? I think so.
We also have Benjamin Lester
That's
giving
right.
us a lot of jokes.
And Benjamin, that's right.
But yes, Matt's Toaster can write our jingles. When we start making commercials, we know who to go to.
That's right.
Ah, mouths.
Mouths, they're so hard, but so nice.
Turn just a little bit this way. Yep.
Matt's Toaster says, LOL, thanks guys. By the way, I do accept check or money order.
There you go.
We will be in touch.
One tip for painting an area that you struggle with is to go low contrast. Go soft.
Mm-hmm.
Sneak up on that drawing.
Yep.
A lot of my teaching things are like from experience.
Oh, all of mine, I think, are from experience. All of them are like, honestly, I always say that the best teachers are people who it didn't come perfectly natural to, but actually had to like work really hard to discover and understand things.
100%.
You know,
Yeah.
because they can share how they came up with the solution and help somebody far better, I think, than sometimes just.
Because you need to understand why something is done
Yeah.
versus just doing it because you're already so good at it.
Right, exactly.
Oh, I just do it because it seems right.
Oh man, I was just getting in. I was so excited about going into this part. All right, everybody, I'll stave that for the next session. See y'all in a second.
Going on 5-minute break. Be right back.
Oh, goodness. So intense.
All right, guys, we're back.
Perfect.
20 more minutes
Dun, dun,
on the
dun.
clock. Starting now.
All right, did you do yourself like one of those things? Like check and make sure that leaning on your hand and you've got your, okay, cool. Turn your head this way and just slightly more vertical. Yep. How does that look for you?
I think I have her chin slightly up.
Okay, that's fine.
Perfect. That looks good for me.
Boom, let's do it.
Boom.
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 Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I'm done. It's the it is. It's the it was decaf, and yet I'm still. I think I've only had like 1/2 of a sip, but it's
Like
enough
by
to.
association because it's
Coffee
coffee.
sounds good right now.
Yeah, I cannot drink coffee in the afternoon. Otherwise, it will most certainly affect my sleep. But I can drink decaf and be fine. So, and you can put your hand back down now that you're like in the position. Until I'm like working on like the shadow of your neck, you know, which your hand affects. We're good there. All right, now I'm gonna go across the form here, but right before I do that, I just want to like get a bit of this ear subtly in. Just make sure I have it low enough. The ear, which Erica mentioned before yesterday, I just want to reiterate her intelligence and education, which is to, the ear is so important for indicating the angle of your face. If the person's like looking up or looking down, the position of the ear in perspective to the front of the face changes significantly and informs the viewer a lot on the angle of the person's position. So
We have a comment from Christopher. Watching the freedom you both paint with belies the experience and knowledge you both possess. Tapping into that knowledge, could you please give me your thoughts on using the Munsell color space as an aid to help with hue, value, and chroma? Thank you.
it's a great question. Erica, do you have?
Actually, I don't have a lot of familiarity with
Okay.
that system,
Yeah, cool.
or at least how it's. I've heard the name. I don't know what it means always, so I shouldn't comment on that.
Cool, sounds good. So the Munsell color system, Munsell he was one of the people that wanted to create, today we have, let me start over. Today we have a thing called Pantone, which is a way of systematizing color so that if you wanted a manufacturer in another country to make logos for your college, they would in turn not know what colors are the official colors of your school. And if you just told them navy blue and red, which is my alma mater's colors, they wouldn't know what navy blue and what red. So there's a color system called Pantone where you are taking what is a universally agreed color system that has a number for each color. And because of that, you can have anywhere in the world manufacture a certain thing for you. Say that you have a certain color tone for, East Oak Studio, for example. We have specific colors that are a part of our brand. And, it all is synced across the board with Pantone color. So before that, Munsell was the first to organize color and in that way because of, I think, of a similar issue that they were running into. And so because of that, he had a whole system he created that is like a scientific system of saying this is going to be a red yellow, and the red yellow is a red yellow 5, and that is the hue. And then there's a value number which says 1 through 10, so it'd be like value 7. And then that tells you that it's pretty bright in value. And then chroma, which is the intensity or the purity of the color, what we often know as saturation if you've ever edited a photo on your phone. And that is what Munsell made, was a system that he was able to use that organized the color in such a way that everyone could agree on and see. Now, a lot of people use that Munsell color system where they'll buy the whole book of color tiles and say that here is a stage of color that we can use, and that everyone kind of agrees that this is what an orange red or whatever it might be. And the reason people use it as artists is because we can match colors with the tiles, and then we can go down and up the category of value, getting more chromatic as we get brighter, and it is a way to ensure that you're getting both chromatic and brighter at the same time, because without getting like off track. So a lot of people use the tiles to help them create these strings of color within like a painting field. Now, that being said, and I hope that was clear enough for everyone, but that being said, I don't necessarily anymore use the Munsell color system, because the issue that I run into is the same with like comparative measurement, which is you can use it to your advantage or you can use it as a crutch. And you have to be careful. Could you bring your chin down just a little bit and turn a little bit that way? Perfect. Is that too much? Too much? Okay.
You're good.
So that being said, is a lot of people rely on it too heavily, and then there's no spontaneity in their painting. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't make the most colorful and harmonious painting with it. You absolutely can, but you just need to be careful of the pitfalls, just like you should be if you did comparative measurement too heavily. You can make what I consider a very wooden style painting where everything feels very stiff and there's no energy in like your figure. So once you've learned it from your training, then you can softly like take off those training wheels and use the knowledge you know of it, hue, value, and chroma, to make a very beautiful painting without having to feel like you have to rely too heavily on any given thing. So that's
really
my take.
interesting. I haven't, like the way I was trained, it's like you still think of hue, value, and chroma in the same way, but just less maybe literal to a predetermined tile.
Yep.
You're still thinking of the concepts in this way, like moving up the scale, up and down, left, right,
1000%. The only difference is that, like you said, it's a predetermined tile system, but almost everybody is trained in a Munsell format, because I think, I could be wrong, and so don't quote me on this, but I think that he was the one that really created the definition of hue, value, chroma to separate it in a three-dimensional format for people in their minds. So thank you. If he did do that, thank you, Munsell, for contributing to the rest of our art worlds.
Paul Mess comments or adds some facts. X-Rite is supplier of color measurement instruments and software, purchased Pantone for $180 million in October of 2007. And was itself acquired by Danaher Corporation in 2012.
Well, look at that. So it's not even, do they still call it Pantone or do they call it, did you say X-Rite?
I think it's called Pantone.
Okay, so they still call it, they just were purchased by that mother company.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then to add to that, the Pantone color matching system is largely a standardized color reproduction system, and as of 2019, it has 2,161 colors.
Wow.
You can make some pretty complex paint by numbers with that.
Oh, yes, you could.
Brings me back to, I took graphic design in college.
Hey, yeah.
It was like, I want to be in a creative career. And I'm like, oh, this is not for me.
Quickly realized. It's kind of like I realized with like marine biology at one point where I was like, you know what? 90% of the time they're in an office just crunching the numbers and not in the field, actually diving every day.
Archaeology, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same.
So it's like, after I figured that out, I was like,
Not for me.
I'll do the pre-med route instead.
And look where you are
Now
now.
look where I am now. Couldn't be happier.
Christopher says, great answer, Lewis. Thank you. Without Munsell and no formal training, I was swimming around in a sea without a life belt.
I love it. I'll never forget the day that I understood or was taught hue, value, and chroma and how it applies to a three-dimensional object. I had been painting for like 7 or 8 years by that point professionally and had never heard of it. And when I heard that, I was like, mind blown. Yep. So.
Alyssa.
Tilting your head gently.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that work for you?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Thank you.
Alyssa asks, with skin tones, is there always a neutral drop before the tone moves into shadow? Sometimes I find it hard to identify what's neutral. Thanks.
It depends on how you're constructing your color values and lighting and a lot of different factors.
Yeah.
Are there times when there might be that neutral area versus when there
The way
wouldn't
I
be
do
specifically?
skin tones is a little different. So I was trained where I go in general. And of course, this is in a neutral lighting situation and with other factors. Anyway, long story short, relatively warm shadow, relatively cool mid-tone, relatively warm highlight or warm light, and then relatively cold highlight. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean orange shadow, blue mid-tone, orange skin, and then a blue highlight. It just means, it just helps you look at color value relationships and temperature relationships. That's how I'm working when I'm mixing up my palette. And so I'm not there. I might think of neutrality because sometimes if something is neutral, it looks colder in relationship to something that's warmer. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's like it depends on how you're talking about it, depends on a lot of factors, where it is in the painting. For example, I want all of this luminous light, warmth, and chroma to be in her face. And so as things are turning away from that, it'll get more neutral in order for the focal area to feel more colorful. Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot of factors that go into that decision making. I think in general, it's helpful to remember that color doesn't exist by itself, always exists in relationship to something else. So if you're struggling to mix up the correct color, look at where it is in relationship to other things, and also first understand its value, and then you can shift in color. Sometimes it's like, okay, I know that this value is working, but then maybe it's too red or too green or too bright, and then you know to shift something else after that. Do you add anything to that?
No. The whole idea of it depends is almost apply. Every formula you ever hear in painting is based off of what happens on an average. And but almost always it depends on a scenario. And so what I try to tell people is the way I personally like to teach doesn't mean I'm always good at it, but if I'm at my best, the way I like to teach is to, instead of giving them a formula, to give them like a map. It's kind of like, instead of giving them a recipe or directions to somewhere, and take a left here, take a right here, like the old MapQuest days, giving them a map to tell them like how you can get there and how you can problem solve. Here's a whole way of understanding directions or understanding the map. And if you get lost, you know that you can take this way, and this way to get around it. And so this is, I think, a perfect example of where I would say, yes, it depends, but here's why this happens, and here's the physics of why it's happening this way. And that was exactly what Erica was doing, is just explaining the sort of the physics of in scenarios of what can happen when. And, so good job.
You know that there are different ways of approaching the shadow and light relationship and things like that, but all of these things are just there to help you observe what's in front of you, just to help calm the chaos a little bit, so that way you have a way forward and,
Calm the chaos. I love that. Calm the chaos. You got to tell people, like, speaking of calming the chaos, you got to tell people about your dentist experience today.
Oh my gosh.
And with that, go back to the fact that, art, for a lot of times, like, we're not just like sitting here having fun. We have to calm the chaos. So you got to tell them about your experience.
So had a dentist appointment today, and the hygienist basically was like, just making some small talk, and she meant really well, but was asking, oh, what are you doing later today? I'm going to go back to work, blah, blah, blah. She's like, what do you do? I'm an artist, I'm a painter. She's like, that's not a real job. Okay. I was like, it sure is. So anyway, did not hash it out with her in the chair, but it did make me laugh, just because I know that what we're doing isn't, it's something that people do as a hobby sometimes.
Yeah,
but
we're talking about, it's like, was it in the heart of like saying, that just sounds too much fun. It doesn't even sound like it could be a job. And Erica was like, yeah, but it was like, well, the problem with that is most of the time we're trying to calm the chaos.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Like, it has its moments of being fun for sure, but and I'm not trying to be too harsh on her, but
no.
it did make me laugh, just because there's so much more than just, oh, I'm having fun with pretty colors. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of work that goes into it for sure. I'm just thinking of when I, doing commissions.
Yeah.
And whether it's the time stress or the stress of getting it to look what the client wants it to look like, and that dialogue between that, like, there's besides just the knowledge it takes to know what you're doing when you're painting. So there's just a lot that goes into it, of course. So
Absolutely.
But I don't blame her for thinking that, when sometimes you look at what's in some contemporary museums and you're like, really?
Yeah. I get it. Like, she's thinking about it like a wine taster, like a sommelier or whatever, and like, oh, that's not a real job. Yeah. No, it is.
Can be.
You know, professional sommeliers out there doing that.
Yep.
And it's not all peaches. Well, grapes. Okay,
Like it.
bad joke. I had fun saying it though. Oh, man.
All right, everybody. That means it's time to go on our next break. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
hair just a little bit longer.
Cool, cool, you guys. We are back for another 20-minute session.
Only 2 more of these sessions left, and then tomorrow, oh, I told everybody I was gonna like darken the, I'll do that in a little bit. Okay.
Time is
All right,
flying.
we'll blaze on. All right, tilt yourself just a little bit. Yep.
Let's
And then
see.
maybe just have a little bit of your raised. Yep. How's that? Yep.
Yep.
Perfect.
Good. Thank
Done.
you.
Beautiful. Before the break, we did have a comment in regards to Lewis's painting. The painting is realistic to the degree that he appears to be putting her makeup on her face for her.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. My wife always says I'd probably be really good at putting makeup on. I was like, it'd be a whole another skill that I don't know. I probably could learn it much faster than most, but
You have the the handling,
Yep.
the control for it.
Should try it out sometime. Never know, you might like it.
if that was true, then that would be the last time my wife would tell me to be like, no, you need, never mind, don't. If you enjoyed that way too much, join the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Maybe for Halloween.
There you go.
Can do something cool with face
Ooh.
painting.
Fun hobby. There are guys who are into it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oi. Do, 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 do. Jean comments, I love this model. She's so beautiful. I may have to come to East Oak Studio sometime to paint.
Well, come on. Jump on in, the water's fine. Yep, getting a claw, so I'm gonna reallocate.
Christopher has a question. It's a little bit of a bigger question. He says, the question I haven't been able to find an answer for is, what function does chroma carry out in a portrait? Value helps us create form. Masters, please give us your wisdom. Thank you.
Oh, well, I've got an answer for you.
Go ahead.
So it does a couple of things. Number one, I was saying this yesterday, which is the light most facing plane of an object not only is just the brightest point in value, unless you have a reflection like a highlight, but it also is the location that is the truest nature of the color. So at its most chromatic, let's say we're painting a fire engine, and the local color is fire engine red. But if we're painting like the fender, which is like a curved object, wherever the light most facing plane spot is, will be the truest nature and the most chromatic nature of the local color, which is fire engine red. So in this instance, for example, her cheeks have probably the most chromatic moment because there's a point on the cheek, and I'll point it out right here, a point on the cheek that is the most chromatic moment and truest to her skin tone. Now, skin tone color, local color on the face shifts because depending on where it is, you might have more capillaries. So usually cheeks are typically a little bit more red than other parts of the face. So if the local color changes, of course, everything else changes too. But some of the areas of the local color that is the most chromatic is still also the cheeks, or maybe the nose. Sometimes the nose can be very, very red. Sometimes not as much, so it depends. But chroma plays a role of finding the moment that is at its most powerful local color, and then everything else goes to less. And so it helps you logically know what you need to be, how you need to be dropping your color as you get away from that area. So that is the role of chroma in anything, but even especially in a portrait.
Thank you.
So in conjunction to that, I'm working on right underneath the eye. Everything gets a little bit cooler than the cheek. And because the local color shifts just a little bit too, which is common in everyone. So I'm just switching right underneath the cheek. I'm adding a little bit cooler, which ends up making the more chromatic point on the cheek feel even more colorful. So that's how you can create a dynamically colorful painting, is by making those soft little shifts one spot at a time after you've gotten your foundation down.
You tilt slightly. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Does that work for you?
Yep, that's great.
Beautiful.
Christopher says, superb, Louis. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Christopher. Another thing that people don't think about is, like, whenever you're working with like hair on eyebrows, on when they attach to the forehead at the top of the hairline, a lot of people make those areas super sharp, when in actuality, if you want it to feel really real, you want to soften those edges like crazy around the hair, and it'll make it feel much more real than having them sharp. Even though it in people's observation, it distinctively feels like it's going to be sharp. It's not in relationship to the rest of the face and what else is going on in the face.
It's also helpful to know, or to remember, that hair, basically, because it's little, an eyebrow is composed of little combination of little hairs. You can almost think of it as something transparent, wrapping around a form.
That's great.
And so it has its own value shifts and edge quality. And so rather than thinking of it like a sticker, really thinking of it in terms of form with its light and shadow can be helpful. And then, of course, using the bone structure to help you understand where and why there are these color and value shifts.
That's good. Also keep in mind, whenever you're working on areas that are less of a focus point of your painting, to consider that they don't need as much information. So abbreviating what you see is helpful, So like, for example, the ear, like I see a whole lot of detail, but for the poetry of the painting, I don't want to put all of that detail in. I just want to inform that it's there and be accurate with my values and colors. And now this is not, that is a part of my poetry creating. That is not necessarily to say that that you have to do that. That is a decision that you get to make of how important and valuable that is. Sitting here just putting some eyeshadow on.
I'm just loving how many colors I can see.
Oh
like,
man,
on
there's just a
did the
million. I
highlight
just
on
want
the
to sit.
forehead, and I'm like,
I just-
put them all in.
I know, gosh. Somebody was talking recently, said like, I feel like painting dark skin would be really hard. And I said, it is my absolute favorite to paint because color, for the most part, exists in lower values. And because of that, I don't often get, when you're painting very fair-skinned people, you're playing more with like warm and cool relationships and making them work, where you're like going over to greens past the point of neutral to like make sure that things pop in a certain way. Whereas with darker skin tones like this, there's just like 1,000 colors that are going on, and you get to like hit them without having to like push other ways of like trying to achieve them.
It's where oil paint, I think, really shines
Yes.
in these richer, deeper colors. Such an opportunity.
Lean asks, I once heard that you shouldn't use black or blue in a portrait shadow. Is that something you would agree on?
I've never heard black or blue in a shadow. I've
Well-
heard not white, and for opacity and making sure not graying out or lightening up the shadow too much. Maybe I'm thinking of it like blue in the mixture. I agree with like pure black or pure blue, maybe not doing that. But of course, depending on the lighting.
Yeah, well, yeah, it absolutely depends. One thing that I bet you, because every formula that someone tells you, like something like that, don't use black or don't use this or don't use it in the shadows, has a reason. And so I bet you I can understand what the reasoning is. So in your skin tone, you have a thing called subsurface scattering that happens where light passes through your skin and then exits usually in the shadow out of the skin. If you ever put a flashlight on your fingers, you'll see all your fingers will glow sort of an orangey red. And what I believe they're talking about is in the shadow of skin tone, not to use blue because they're thinking about the fact that light's passing through the skin and it'll make it feel lifeless. But that also can depend. It depends on the environment, depends on how blue your background is. It depends on like all sorts of things. So because there's sometimes where you can create the illusion of something like that happening, where it is totally a blue color, but still feels like it has the warmth of like that skin, you know? So that person's not wrong, but I wouldn't trust that as just look for it and look for why is what I would say, you know?
It reminds me a bit of where people don't want to use ivory black,
Yeah,
thinking that it'll kill the chroma.
right. Yeah.
But if you know how to use it, of course you can't create an ultramarine richness of blue, you know, but with ivory black. But so you know its limits. But if you have the right relationships, it can be definitely cool enough.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think it's just being aware of how to use your pigments. And if you're finding that you're a bit heavy-handed when you're mixing your colors and when using ivory black, you know, sometimes that can contribute to something looking gray and dull if you're overusing it.
It is something to be wary of, but
I mean,
You know, it'll
you've
be-
used it in your thing just now.
I'm using it. I'm using black all over the hair and even in the skin tone because, like you were saying, it's just a lower chroma blue.
And sometimes you need the opacity of an ivory black versus, for example, mixing transparent red oxide and ultramarine will create a beautifully rich, transparent, dark color. But sometimes you want something with a bit more coverage.
Yep.
And you can do that with ivory black. But of course, the person who said don't use don't use black in figure painting probably observed how it can gray things down because it's so dark and neutral. So again, it's just about relationships.
So, and here's a good example where I'm putting black into my transparent red oxide, and that is to make her hair shadow color. And then in the light, I'm making it more ultramarine blue related in the light in order for it to have a warm-cool relationship to the light source. So.
Thank you. It's a good stuff there.
And how awesome has all the people behind the mic this week been? You know, just a huge thanks to Livia and Erica and Tina and Evie, always having such great conversation as the MC of the group.
The audience asks good questions. Makes it easy. And Lane says again, super insightful. Thanks.
You're so welcome.
We have 1 minute left of this session, and then we have one more session after this. Are you guys doing anything to wrap up for the day? Changing modes a bit?
I'm gonna work on the hand and the neck, and while she's off the stand, I might darken down the her outfit for preparation of tomorrow. So yeah.
Yeah.
I have to make sure I have the eyes in a decent place. I don't want to have to redraw the eyes tomorrow.
It's looking good, you guys.
Thank you. You said we're 1 minute?
Yeah, just like 10 seconds now.
Yeah. Cool. Cool.
And with that, we are going on to our final break, and we'll be back with the last session. All right, guys, we're back from break. This is our final session. We are going to be going until 5 o'clock, so 22, 23 minutes.
Nice.
Can you gently lift your chin? Perfect, thank
Are
you.
you cool to pull your hand out a little bit? You got the fingers right. Just pulling your that's just a little more. Okay. How do you feel about that?
Beautiful.
Yeah. Cool. So, like we were saying earlier, one of the challenges with hands. Actually, I think we were saying this off on the break. The challenge with hands is they're never exactly perfectly back in the right spot, and you just need to get them close. And so it's just, for me, it's paramount that when I first paint the hand, that I get kind of all of the hallmark features of exactly where the hand is, and pray that it works out so that the next session that I put on it, I can get the hand close to their original position, and then just adjust the lighting and refine a few points on it. Also considering that, like, never getting the hand to be, in my opinion, if you're doing a portrait, that you don't want it to steal the show either. So, so to consider the hand being the right, like, amount of abbreviated marks, and where it supports the face but doesn't take away from it. I might be cutting off my camera angle for a second. Just gonna just peek around the corner. So the other thing to think about is like harmonizing the face color with the hand color. You know, like her hand is local color is a little bit lighter than her face, but they're still in the same family. So you want to make sure that they still sync.
Do you intend to paint all the fingernails?
No, definitely not. That would be awesome if I could, but yet again, probably not helpful for that. I'm thinking like Essence of Sargent right now with the detail painting I did. If you look at his fingers in that, like the fingernails are in there, but they're like so soft, so fuzzy that like you have to like look for them, you know? And I kind of want this to feel that way. I want it to, if they are in there, they're so soft and so subtle that you're almost not even able to see them.
Just implied.
Mm-hmm.
That way you're not feeling like something's missing, but
Right.
with your shape design, there's a lot you can do with it, with your edges and your shape design to imply. She has this lovely reflected light from the jacket on her cheek, but I'm not going to put it in yet. I might do that tomorrow. And the reason being is that I don't want to make my shadow too chalky quite yet. And so once I have everything else in, then I'll be able to just imply gently a little bit of light hitting her cheek. It'll help clarify the jaw structure, but I don't want to gray it out too much at this stage. sometimes I have to remind students, it's not because they don't see it, it's because there's a time and a place.
Mm-hmm.
When you're painting a white sweater, such as the one she's wearing, or just white things in general, how much do you consider like the background and the things around it that's influencing it?
Oh, for sure. I think of it a lot. One teacher at school would basically say, or to pay attention to how not white things that are white are. And
That
so
helps so much when you tell somebody that.
It's so helpful. And so, for example, the local color is light, but that just means it takes on a lot of the other colors that's surrounding it. So, for example, there's a bit of the background, a bit of her skin tone in it too, and it has its own light and shadow that's happening in relationship to the light source. So, those are some factors. And plus, from an optical point of view, from staring at her face, and I'm squinting down, I don't want the coat to be too bright and therefore distracting from her face. And so I try to keep all that in mind when I'm painting something white.
Are the highlights or the bright parts of the white sweater being influenced much differently than the shadows?
Can you repeat that?
Do you think of how the lights are being influenced differently than the shadows?
I think of it as both. I think it is both. I think, for example, with the shadow, you can see how close it is to the background. There's going to be that influence in there. And then with the light, and any planes that are turning towards the background, of course, are going to be influenced by the background color. But then also the light, I think, I can't think of it as something separate. So if I make it, for example, too warm and too light and too kind of peachy, it'll feel like it's in a different world than the background.
Yeah.
So I think of it in kind of on all planes, all senses.
Cool. Moonsoon is commenting with a question. I once heard that painting models' hands is the most difficult thing in portraiture, and that by looking at the painted hands, one can determine the artist's level of skill mastery. What do you think?
I don't agree.
You don't agree?
I don't agree. I'll say that if your ability to paint hands, because hands are incredibly complex, is a great indication of somebody's skilled.
Yeah,
However,
yeah.
you can see Rembrandt hands, Sargent hands. I could name off multiple people where they're so abbreviated and often not anatomically correct, but it works with the painting, and they are all, in their instances, they're all funneling your eye to the portrait. So they're just not putting significance there. So to determine whether the portrait is good, if that was one of your deciding factors, not always is what I meant to say, not always is it a good indicator. In fact, I had a client one time, am I out of paper towels? Where did I put this? There they are. I had a client one time ask me this, or say that they're like, you can always tell if this portrait's good based off of their hands. And there are several times where I was like, well, look at this Sargent, This Sargent painting, the hands are just nothing but a few wisps, and the portrait is fabulous.
My only counter is that it takes so much knowledge and skill to create an abbreviated hand that is meaningful. It doesn't look like a weird claw.
I absolutely agree. And there's definitely situations where Sargent has done exactly that, but there's sometimes where it's not like a white claw where the hands are like splayed like this.
Yeah.
And they're just like a few marks that are softened, you know, because she might have been a dancer or might have been doing something and he's expressing movement versus anatomical correction. And
Well, I think like level of rendering shouldn't dictate the quality of the painting in the hand, you know?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think for definitely, you can tell sometimes whether the hand is less painted, less complete, less rendered because they were doing it intentionally abbreviated, or is it just lack of skill, or they were avoiding it because they're not as good as it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that absolutely can be a thing. But I think to some people who don't have a trained eye won't know the difference between when something's being abbreviated and when something's just not being painted well. I think this is where the heart of the matter I'm getting to, which is a layman's eyes might not be able to know which one is the one that was an educated understanding if they were just to look at it in isolation. Kind of like you might not know whether a wine is a $100,000 bottle of wine if you don't compare it with a cheap bottle of wine next to
Well,
it.
obviously the design of the label is how you determine.
Duh. So I think that's more of where I'm coming from is that, you know, some people might look at one of Sargent's hands and be like, oh, he wasn't that great of a painter. Look at the hands. You know, he didn't render the hands out when it's not about the rendering.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, if you know what you're looking for, you know, it can be a determinant factor. But sometimes I wonder if people have the eye to know that aren't in the art field. Sometimes I think they get it wrong. And the something that I always bring up, and this is controversial to some people, but it is something I firmly believe, is that we sometimes put some of the old masters on a pedestal of God status, where anything they did, they never had a bad day, you know, and they absolutely had bad days. And they absolutely had days that were hard and that they might not have painted better well one day versus another. And so many times I have seen people be like, oh, that is like incredible, this thing here. And it's like, no, that actually, I think that was a bad day. You know, see how he intentionally made that arm look, you know, rubbery. It's like, you know.
Maybe not.
See how they made the fingers look like hot dogs on purpose?
How awesome are those hot dog fingers? And so that they're human beings that have hard days just like anybody else. And, you know, and so sometimes there are times where I'm like, you know, this might be one of those situations where it was a tough day.
Moonsoon says thank you. Heart.
Thank you for the question. It was a great question.
And what is the most difficult thing in portraiture for you?
Whew. I mean, sometimes it's the lips for me, man. I think we bridged the gap on that today, but yeah, I think that many times it can be the lips. Speaking of, it makes me see something and I'm gonna go fix it.
I could agree with that one.
But you know, eyes can be deceivingly hard too. I don't know if it's deceivingly hard. I think a lot of people have a hard time with eyes. And so, like, for me, eyes, it's more about like the expressive nature of the eyes. Is that being shown? You know, that to me is the more determining factor. This is the last session, right?
Yep. We have like 7 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, gotta let go of the hand.
I want to create just a little bit of a connecting point with her face to her hand. It's so easy to like have the hand like right next to the face, but then all of a sudden they just don't feel like they're actually touching. So making sure that there's a point at which both of them connect. And, you know, I'll probably more than likely work on this tomorrow too. Kind of like the lips, where at the end of the day, if I'm working on this, I might try one more session where we get that back finger similar to how she had it. And we can work on that. But be too much probably today. So instead, I'm gonna like get it close, soften this up just a little bit, and work on it again mañana.
You know, we're talking about painting a white object. The same principles or, you know, things to look out for apply when painting the whites of the eyes, is that they're not really that white, or at least they are influenced by a lot of things, such as where they are in relationship to light source, and much more neutral.
Yeah, sometimes they're deceptively dark.
Mm-hmm. So I know that, you know, since we only have a few minutes left, I'm not going to have the eyes perfect, but I would like to have them set up for me to refine tomorrow. Part of what makes them so challenging is how sensitive we are to their emotional quality. And so any little change completely changes how we feel, or, you know, how you emotionally respond to it. So again, little by little.
Eyebrows are great for that reason. You can really change the expression very easily with the eyebrows.
Mm-hmm.
How much time do we have left, Liv?
We have 3.5 minutes.
All right, so change one of the whole eyes, right?
Yeah.
I want you to scrape it and start over.
Okay, I'm gonna switch over to a quicker, bigger brush to see if I can get this last little bit in before we break. You know, I'm always sad that there's not sort of a bless you Gesundheit for coughing.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and just say bless you. Bless you again. Gesundheit with a cough. All right, so one thing I'm doing before we end today's session is just softening some of the spots that I'm not done with. Goodness. It's okay, it's almost done.
Did you focus on your breathing too much?
Something. Something's happening.
All right, we got 1 minute on the clock.
1 minute on the clock. Thank goodness, we might lose a model. If I can add just a little bit of warmth to that finger.
Oh, poor girl, do you need water?
Yeah, do you need anything?
I'm going to do some water as soon as we're done.
So go through.
Bring, bring,
All right.
bring.
All right, everyone. We're gonna call it for today.
Thank you.
But we got to say thank you to our absolutely lovely model. She's doing such a great job, and to all the other people that are in the room. We're gonna let her go ahead and get some water. But thank y'all everybody for joining us today. Tomorrow what I'm gonna do is just put a little bit of a dry. Y'all see this like violet-y area, more gray than anything area here. I'm gonna kind of cover the rest of her outfit in this color. What that is gonna allow me to do is be able to drag white or an off-white color on top of it to create the particular sort of fuzzy texture that she has in her thing. I might just soften a few more things before to get it prepped for tomorrow, but aside from that, that's all I'm gonna do. And thank y'all again for joining us, and we have 1 day left tomorrow. Don't miss it, the grand finale. It's gonna be wonderful. So until then, happy painting. Enjoy the rest of your evening/morning, depending on where you are, maybe afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Goodbye.